What's up, YouTubers and plant lovers? It's Justin, and today I was going to show you how I care for my large jade. More specifically, it's my Crassula ovata Gollum. Now, this beautiful plant is one of my favorite bonsai trees that I have. If the house were ever on fire, God forbid, and I only had time to grab a couple of plants, this would be one of the first ones that I did grab. I love this tree. Now, a lot of people raise it as a bonsai tree, and it is a little hard to do. They've got great ramification or branching for a bonsai. And as you know, they've got these trumpet-shaped leaves. They're really succulent and waxy, kind of full of water. And they've got this beautiful kind of textured grayish brownish colored trunk with the branches. The newer growth, it comes in green and then starts to slowly turn brown and tan over time. And then the contrast with the jade green leaves, hence the name of the jade plant. With this kind of textured colored bark, it looks spectacular, and I love this plant. Now, I know my last video was on shaping my other large jade bonsai tree up and getting it ready for summer. This guy has since been outside and gotten some sunlight and been in the heat and everything. But today I just want to focus on how I care for one of these large guys and how I get them to stay at this large size and what all I have to do to keep them that way happy and healthy. Now, as you know, one of the very first videos I did on a jade plant, I actually lost because I overwatered them. So I will tell you now that these are not the pots that you want to put these trees in. Now, I had to do some modifications to this pot, and I think I ended up putting about 3 holes in the bottom. As you can tell, it's got this little saucer on the bottom, so it would actually hold all that water in, and it has nowhere to go, so if it rained, it wouldn't be able to freely drain. And it has a nice little reservoir on here that it would hold a good amount of water in and probably end up killing my plant. But I just took a regular drill and turned the thing over and drilled through it and put like 2 or 3 holes in the bottom of it so that the tray or the saucer wouldn't actually hold water. Now, this particular plant comes from Mozambique and South Africa. And I don't know if you're too familiar with that area, but it's kind of the subtropical and tropical climate, and some of it is actually kind of hot, arid, dry climate, and some of it is pretty hot and humid too. Now, typically these plants in South Africa get a decent amount of humidity, and they like a decent amount of humidity too. They can actually tolerate up to about 50% humidity levels, and that's perfect for northern Kentucky in my climate. We get a decent amount of rain, which gives us a decent amount of humidity, and we get that extreme intense heat and sunlight. So it's rather at home in northern Kentucky for the summer months. Now, I do have to look out for him and make sure that if it does rain a whole bunch, I'll actually bring him in or set him off somewhere that's kind of sheltered and he doesn't get a whole bunch of actual rain. Because as I said, they do succumb to root rot rather quickly. That is the leading cause of death with these plants, is overwatering. And I can attest to that because I actually killed one of my large favorite jade trees. So, if you're one who likes to water a lot, make sure you do not water a bunch with this plant. And as I was saying earlier, this is not the pot to put them in. They actually like something that would drain freely, has a nice sized drainage hole at the bottom, or a couple of drainage holes in the bottom. And actually a terracotta pot would be perfect because these trees are actually very top heavy. So if they were to be in a plastic pot or something of that nature, then they would probably tip over really easily. So something kind of heavy like this one, or terracotta, is really great, also because it's porous and it will actually help the air flow through it and dry the soil out rather quickly. Now, as I was saying, I don't water this guy at all unless it's been about 2 weeks since I've gotten anything from Mother Nature. Then I may intervene and give him a little bit of water. But they do like pretty dry soils. I keep mine store-bought, but I have made soils for jade trees before, and I believe I used 3 parts garden soil, 2 parts of the horticultural grade sand, to 1 part pumice. But I always use now the store-bought Miracle-Gro cacti and succulent, and that's perfect for these guys. Now, I did have a little bit of pine bark shavings, and I kind of threw that in there and kind of put some on top just to make sure I didn't have to water him too much. So there's a little bit of wood shavings on top. They actually kind of help hold a little bit of moisture in because he doesn't get much rain at all. So any kind of water that's in there, I do want it to stay in there just a little bit longer, though it's not always ideal. So it has helped him because, like I said, he doesn't get much water at all. Now, with the light, you have to give these guys at least 4 to 6 hours of direct sunlight a day. So you want to make sure that they do have some protection from the sun during the hotter part of the day, and make sure that it does get a little bit of shade because it can kind of scorch the leaves, but ideally they do like a lot of bright indirect sunlight. So it can tolerate a little bit of shade, and I think shade around 3, 4, 5 o'clock somewhere. As it gets hotter and more intense sunlight, it needs a little bit of shade. But if you want ample growth and be very robust and vigorous growth, and you want the beautiful red tips on the leaves that they get, then you're going to want some direct sunlight to help with that. If not, it's going to be all leggy, etiolated, and it won't get that color red-tipped, trumpet-shaped leaves that look so spectacular on these trees. As I said earlier, we talked about the soil, and he likes it very gritty. It has to drain freely, and it has a little bit of compost maybe to it, something that can feed him just a little bit, but they're not very heavy feeders. So you want the soil pH to be slightly acidic, around 6 to 6.5. On up to 7, neutral is okay, but they do like it a little bit more on the acidic side, slightly. So I keep mine at about 6.5, and he seems to be happy with that. Air circulation is also very important with these guys. Like they're kind of wobbly and they can break off really easily. So one, you don't want to put them in a high traffic area where somebody can accidentally bump into it. And as you can tell, mine is getting over a rather unfortunate incident last year with a cat where she tried to sharpen her claws on here. So keep them away from cats. They are extremely poisonous to dogs, cats, and to little kids and people. Ironically though, it's not toxic at all to birds, so they're okay with that, but cats, dogs, horses, and people, you kind of want to keep those away from this plant because it can cause some mild nausea, some vomiting, and stuff like that. Now, coincidentally, if you don't have it in a high sunlight area and it gets rather leggy, you can actually do something about that. Just like in my last video where I started trimming back above a node, you can find these little grooves on here, or these little nodes, and you can trim right above one and cut it off. You want to use very sharp pruning shears and clean, sanitized pruning shears too, to kind of cut above the node and cut some of that legginess off, and then that will actually encourage it to kind of branch and be more full too. Now, with all this ramification, that branching and all this, you're just going to kind of come in and look for shriveled up, unsightly leaves that are dying, and anything that may indicate some kind of rot, any discoloration, any kind of mushiness, or anything that smells kind of funny too that may indicate that you have something wrong with your tree, a rot or an infestation or anything of that nature. And then you also want to kind of look through here with a bright light and see if you see any kind of filaments, anything that looks like a little bit of a spider's web, because you may have spider mites with these guys too. Scale can be a problem, and mealybugs can be a problem on here as well. So you just kind of want to go over it and make sure he does look rather clean. And I always say that you should give your plants a bath once or twice, once a month or once every other month. You should kind of take them outside and take the garden hose and spray them off, or throw them in your bathtub and use the detachable shower head to kind of spray them off. And any of that water jets will kind of come in here just like Mother Nature does with rain and knocks off anything that's set up shop and is kind of infesting your tree. So if you get a good little blast of water, you can knock a bunch of those pests off, any of those kind of filaments for the spider mites, and kind of help your plant if it's got any kind of infestation. Now, obviously I wouldn't do that if it just got some rain. So if you've just watered it recently, wait another month or two and then take him and spray him off. But you should be giving them a bath about once every 2 months or so, and that will help him keep clean and make sure that he has no problems with anything else. I am going to give him a quick one over and make sure I don't see any problem areas here. And you do have to be very careful with any of these kind of lighter color leaves. You can just kind of knock them off and end up leaving it on the floor for your cats or your dogs or your little babies too. So make sure that if you see any of them that look really kind of yellow-green, you go ahead and remove those because they will end up falling off easily, and then somebody could end up ingesting one of those. But if you're touching your leaves a lot and they're just kind of dropping, then you do have some kind of a problem. Now, you may end up having a problem with too much water because that is a leading cause of leaf droppage too. Or you may just have a problem with not enough sunlight. Like I said, they're not very heavy fertilizers or feeders, so I don't feed mine that often. I put Tim in a new pot last year, and I'm sure he'll be ready for some food probably about halfway through the summer. It just started to be summer a couple days ago, so I'll probably wait till mid-July and give him a light kind of cacti and succulent fertilizer feeding, just to kind of help him out a little bit. But they're not very heavy feeders. I don't see anything wrong. It looks really good. I don't see any kind of branching that I'm wanting to remove either. Although these heavier branches are getting a little top heavy, so I may come back in a couple of weeks and prune some of this top off just to make sure it's not too heavy and he's not leaning back. I would hate for one of these branches to break off. And then also I kind of want to look over the soil and make sure I don't see any kind of weeds pulling up through there. Anything that's going to compete with him for nutrients will be a problem, and I'll just remove that. Now these guys, if they're cared for properly, they can live up to about 100, 150 years old, so make sure that you are paying close attention to your jade because they can live a long time, and if cared for properly, you may end up having to pass it down the line. Ideally, they don't get too big. They're usually about 2 to 3 feet tall by about 1 to 2 feet wide, so they're perfect bonsai specimen too. Alright guys, well that concludes it for this video. As always, I want to give a special shout out to some of my patrons like David and Heather. If you want to support my channel through Patreon, please check the link in the description box below. Until next time, it's been Justin reminding you that if you can, go out and plant a tree. Let's reforest the world. And while you're at it, leave me a comment and let me know if you've ever had any kind of success or failures with any of your jade bonsai trees. Take care and always plant prudently. Thank you, YouTube.